because the people of Moab didn't help the Israelites when they came out of Egypt, the law did not permit any descendant of a Moabite to join Israel down to the 10th generation. If they couldn't even join the community, how could one of them serve as king? So the book is set up like a drama or a stage play. Each scene features a short introduction and then dialogue between the characters. The book ends with the 10-generation genealogy leading up to David. So we want to, that is the history. Oh, I'm sorry. The book also shows how God's purposes are accomplished in the world. God's good laws allowing the poor to collect grain in the field. His providence over events and personal kindness of people all combined to help find a redemptive story, a redemptive conclusion. Okay, so that is the history. Let's get to the scripture. We're starting at the 12th verse of Ruth chapter 4. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman may be your family. Be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So she's giving permission. How many of you have had a mother-in-law that you just really, really, really love? I did. And even though I divorced her son, I never severed our relationship. She was my children's grandmother, and I had loved her. There was no reason when I remarried to stop loving her. So I cared for her and cared for her right on up till she died. So I understand. I understand being attached to a person that other people think you ought not be close to. Okay, so Boaz, it starts at the 13th verse. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Now we must understand in Jewish history, sons were always important. Girls were just passed on off to be married to somebody, anybody. Y'all come get her. But the sons, the males dominated all of that society, with very few exceptions. And when Boaz, to the first part, get to the introduction. There's a rich history to this. Excuse me. sorry, I had a ton of notes. I had a ton of notes when in my phone. So when Boaz married and she became his wife, the Lord enabled her because she wasn't able for a while to conceive and gave birth to a son. Now, the male children were extremely important in the culture of the Israelites. So the woman says to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer." Now, a guardian redeemer was a person of means, close to wealthy, if not there. And they took care of, just brought him in and took care of him. And she said, "May he become famous throughout Israel." And we know how important Boaz is. We understand, I think David was born of that line like 100 years later. But they kept the genealogy going. Now, me, I can't go past my grandmother. And fortunately, my grandson is researching. But people, when I was growing up, people just didn't talk about their grandparents and their great-grands because it was about slavery. It was about sharecropping and a very separate, it was very separate in terms of issues of black and white, even after slavery. So we understand what it feels like for somebody to be like on the outside. So the women were talking to her, and they said, "He'll renew your life and sustain you in your old age." Now that hits us today. The Bible tells us to train up a child the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't. And that's true. They may stray. But at some point they come back because they have something to come back to. I don't know how many of you have fences in your yard, but remember as kids, you could hear your parents yelling, "Shut the gate, shut the gate," because they wanted to be protected on the inside. And so there was a culture in Israel, among the Israelites, to take care of the widows and orphans. And usually they, if I recall correctly, they sent them on back to, or wanted to send them back to their own people. But in this case, she didn't want to go. And she wanted to be with her mother-in-law because Naomi's husband died, and so did both sons. So Naomi is without a husband. And they would always try to find somebody to put with in the family to keep the name going. Okay? So it's prophesied here. So sorry. That he would be a great child. Okay. So she's been told he will renew your life and sustain you in your old ages, which is important. I already told you that. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. So Naomi takes the child in her arms. She cares for him. And the women living there said, "Naomi has a son." And they named him Obed. And he was the father of Jesse. He was the father of David. you can go past your great grandparents. And this is just my opinion. I think there was so much shame associated with our ancestors coming up under slavery in very harsh conditions. Families were broken up. That's what I'm trying to say. Families were broken up, and it was really hard to keep up with whoever was. They'd separate husband and wife. They didn't care about that. Sell off the children. I mean, it was money to slaveholders. So, but here we see the bloodline stain, and it was going through the males. So at some point, Boaz announces to the elders and all the people, he says, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilian, and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth the Moabite." Now that's interesting that she's called an acquisition. Women did not, for the most part, did not have a level of importance like we do in this society. And even in this society, we didn't get it until like in the late 60s with women's liberation. Okay. So the widow is his wife. He says in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from the family or his hometown. Today you are witnesses. Now, that's real important. Maintaining the family names and and their cultures. And I was looking at an article a couple of days ago on why former slaves and their descendants, us, like certain foods. Of course, you know their name, greens and the ants. And so culture is transferred from generation to generations. Now, we may not do all the things that our grandparents, great and great-grandparents did, but a lot of the traditions we still honor. We have them, and it used to be every household you walked in had a coffee table and an open Bible sitting. You didn't touch the coffee table. You didn't touch the Bible. And in that Bible, it would have a history of the family. I don't recall the last time I saw a Bible like that. But on the other hand, we have we can look stuff up on YouTube or whatever social media and find out, trace our family roots. Anyway, Ruth is taken, and her daughter-in-law just didn't want to leave, and told her, "Where you go, I'm going. Where you live, I'm going to live." And that's loyalty. That's loyalty. Now, our history is not, and in this country, the history, men don't have to just marry their brother's wives. In fact, if you have more than one, that's polygamy and outlawed in this nation. But Ruth, Naomi, has this faithful daughter-in-law, and even though her husband died, she just stayed close. So this Mahlon's widow steps in as the wife. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah." Rachel and Leah were early at the very top of the nation of Islam. Nation of Israel was born. So they're witnesses to these things, and they're asking that she be fertile and carry the name. And may you have standing in the nation. The offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez whom Tamar and Judah. That tells us how Judah was formed. So, as I said, Boaz takes Ruth for his wife. They have a son. And the women were very happy. We may have family members or friends that were unable to conceive for a long time, and then I just read where a woman was unable to conceive. She was in her 60s and finally had a baby. So it really ain't the odds. We live according to God's plan. We are not accidents. We understand that while we were in our mother's wombs, God had a purpose for us. And we know that from John the Baptist's mother. We know that from Jesus' mother. Okay. So it goes on to say, Naomi took the child in her arms and carried it. When the women living said, "Oh, Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. And it goes on down to the genealogy. Okay, now, the next place I'm supposed to go to, I'm not sure because I don't have a phone. Where are we supposed to go after the 4th chapter? Does anybody know? Luke or John? Luke 3? Okay, 23. All the way to 38, you said? I can't hear. So in the book of Ruth, we have the start of the nation. By the time we move to Luke, now Jesus himself was about to be 30 years old when he began his ministry. He was the son of Joseph, so it was thought, and we all know it was a virgin birth. Folk thought the baby belonged to, that Joseph was the child. And we've got to go to 38. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Okay. This is just part of the lineage, because as I said, they kept their they kept their children. Let me go back up to 23. I am so sorry to be so ragged, and I'm not feeling well, so ask you. So all this lineage is listed. Okay, I'm going to go back to Ruth because we know the genealogy. But respect time, I'm gonna close this. Most of us know the story of Ruth and Naomi. And if you have a daughter-in-law, many of us cherished our daughter-in-law. I have 3, and I cherish every one. So this life of Ruth, the story of her life and what happened and the promises that God made, and of course he delivered, because he always does. Always. There absolutely is no failure in God. And when we look at this, we understand loyalty. That's important. I remember, I'm almost positive it was Bishop. And I had told, this is early when we first started coming. And I was telling him how much I enjoyed the service and all. And he said, and I've told you all this before, but it bears repeating. He says, well, I hope you all stay. So I said, Bishop, we on church hop. We go where God sends us. So he sat me on the second row, and all of y'all know my relatives that come, because this is where we're supposed to be. In this story, Ruth was where she was supposed to be. There is no failure in God. Repeat that. God has a purpose for every one of us. And it's our responsibility. We owe God our lives, our service, because he gave us life and sent his only begotten to give us life everlasting. So it's all about gratitude. I know right now, are you raising your hand? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Satan took that thought too. What was I saying, Sister Scott? Thank you. And she was where she was supposed to be. That's why I told you the story about us coming here. We're here because we're supposed to be. Everything in our lives is orchestrated by God. Those of us that believe in Jesus, we have fuller lives. We have future. We're striving to get to heaven. And I feel so sorry for atheists. How do you think you got here? For real. Why you don't comprehend that it wasn't us doing us, that God orchestrated everything. The Bible tells us before the foundation of the world was laid, in the mind of God, the lamb had already been slain. So nothing happens past God's purpose. And if we're unsure what our purposes are in Christ, in the Lord, in his church, we must pray and find out. Because God uses every one of his saints for something. Okay. Bishop, if you will close us out through prayer. Thank you.
Father, we thank you, praise you for coming heaven to earth, being the sacrifice that purchased our salvation. Thank you, Lord, for this lesson today. Help us to hide your word in our hearts, to be obedient to your word. Bless, Lord, the teacher and the student. In Jesus' name, amen.
Test, 1, 2. Okay.